Hi everyone, just before we get into the video, I just want to say thank you to Kirsty Gray and everyone at the Genealogy Show for allowing me to present, and most importantly for allowing me to post this up. I hope everyone who watched this will enjoy it as much as everyone at the show did, and without further ado, let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my talk, Genealogy from a Young Genealogist Perspective. So, let's get into it. My background in genealogy is as follows. I started in January of 2017 at the age of 13 by asking questions about my family and my heritage. A few days later, I started building a basic family tree. In my research, I have gotten back conclusively to the 1830s and the 1840s, and for anyone that does Irish genealogy will know that if you get back that far, it's good going. Genealogically, my roots are from Swinford in County Mayo on my father's side, and on my mother's side, Dungarvan in County Waterford and Newcastle in County Limerick. And now the age-old question. How do you get young people into genealogy? Well, in my experience, parental role plays a big part in this, whether it's showing young people photos of their ancestors before them, sharing family stories, be it truths or rumours that have yet to be confirmed, or records being the originals or copies and telling the story behind them. In my case, it was after the death of a great uncle asking my parents about their heritage. My next 2 points are about photographs. So, number one, seeing old photographs can definitely spark an interest. It's a tried and tested method with me. On the right hand side, you will see my great grandparents, John Loftus and Ellen Noon, on their wedding day in March of 1911. It's one of the oldest photos I have, and it's one of my favourites. Because on my father's side, I don't have many photos going back that far. So I'm very fortunate and lucky to have that one. My second point with photos is if you have old photographs, get people to help label who everyone is. This can be so useful and a big conversation starter. It's useful because you will then know who everyone is in the photos should you need to look at them later on and add them into the tree or family tree or something. Or you it's a conversation starter because if you sit down with your grandparent or whoever it may be, getting them to help label who they are in the photos, then you are creating a conversation as to who is in the photos, what's the story behind the photos, when was it taken, where was it taken, why was it taken, um, what was it for. Um, it'll then it'll then give you a picture as to, how how those people's lives were and a bit more about their background than anything else. Uh, Another thing is, and this is Genealogy 101, do this before you do anything else. Ask older relatives about their family as they can be a wealth of information while they're still around. When I started in 2017 in January, I only had one grandparent still around, and unfortunately he would pass away later that year. So while I never got to ask my grandparents anything about their families, I was able to ask, relatives of theirs who were able to tell me more about their family. So it it helped immensely. Another point is write stuff down, record conversations with permission so you can get a first-hand account of what was recalled. This point goes hand in hand with the point I just left. So John Loftus on the right-hand side was born in a place called Treenduff in Bahola in County Mayo in 1876. And if I write that stuff down from my granddad telling me, oh, he was born here and in this date, or in this year, and if I didn't write that down, I could have gotten confused with something else and said, right, he was born in 1874 in Castlebar. Why can't I find him? Be it how long after the fact I was talking to her about it. So if you write stuff down, even if they're just little notes and you expand on them later on, it will help you remember stuff and you won't be guessing as to where, when, whatever it may be. And another tried and tested method with me is showing family memorabilia with young people. Can definitely intrigue. So I have in my possession a coin which is now a necklace, turned into a necklace by my grandmother, that had my great-grandparents' marriage date and their names in Oscuelga in Irish. So Pádraig Ó Éallán August Courtney Archer, and then followed by the date, the 14th of January 1921. So that coin is now 100 years old, so I'm very fortunate to have that, because it is amazing to see. The question at the moment is, why aren't there many young genealogists today? My first point is potential discouragement from the older generation of genealogists. So, what I mean by this is, I haven't been a victim of it or have been on the receiving end of it, but some young genealogists might, be given out to my older genealogists for something wrong they might have said, or a fact they got wrong, or whatever it may be. And the older generation might, say, well, in a matter-of-fact tone, this is what it should have been, this is where you went wrong, etc., etc. Now, with social media, be it Facebook, Twitter, whatever, you cannot get emotion from words on a phone. You can only get emotion if you're actually physically talking to them. So while you're being nice and you're not being mean at all, it may come across as mean to the younger genealogists and think, oh, well, they're giving out to me, I must be doing something wrong, and then stop. So just be as helpful as you can when you're helping on genealogists, and don't make it seem like you're discouraging them in any way. So my second point is lack of people their own age not doing it. You're going to hear about my own experience about this in the next few points, but I only have a few friends in real life that do genealogy, touch on it with them a little bit, nothing huge. So obviously, if there's not many people their own age doing it, they probably won't either. Another thing is they might be shunned by peers if they are into it, but others aren't. This did happen to me. I had an experience where I was into genealogy and was talking about it to others, and people were then, a few people afterwards were mocking me for liking it, and it's a rubbish topic to get into, or it's no fun, whatever it may be, or you're odd for doing it, that sort of thing. So if that happens, that can be a real downer for those who are into it but basically choose not to do it because it's not cool or whatever it may be. Another thing is, not many places for young genealogists to connect. So, when I started Daniel's Genealogy in 2019 in June, I felt very lonely as there weren't many people my own age on Instagram, is where I started off first, that I could connect with that were my own age. But I think about 2 months later, I then met who would become the two co-founders alongside me of the Hidden Branch, Emily and Tyler. So as long as they have a place to connect, like Instagram or a Facebook group or something, then that's what will, stitch it closely together and not leave many gaps between young genealogists. Another thing is the automatic assumption that their own story won't be interesting. The one thing I'd ask is, have you tried? And if the answer is no, then how do you know? You could have a petty criminal bouncing in and out of jail every month. Or you could have a war veteran that the story was not told. Or you could have a draper and a hurler that helped fund the GAA in its early days, like I did. Dan Fraher was his name, and he was my 2 times great-grandfather on my maternal side. Now, while my maternal side is a tad more interesting when it comes to, finding stuff out about them, my father's side was primarily agricultural labourers and farmers. Now, while that might not seem interesting, it is, because you don't know if they were a farmer that did very well in life, or that they fell down on hard times, whatever the story is. Like, even the farmers can be interesting. My next point is, the topic of the past mightn't be brought up for a particular reason. Now, what would happen in all families, but it will happen for some, where the past won't be brought up for a particular reason. Respect that. Don't push boundaries. Just accept that, right, I mightn't get very far because not many people want to talk about the past. That's okay. Start with you and what you know and preserve that. If you don't go back very far, preserve your own history. Prioritize that. My next point is, the hobby of genealogy may not be well known amongst young people nowadays. This ties in with point number 2 and 3. If there aren't many young people into genealogy, they probably will not do it, because it'll be seen as not cool, or, it won't be seen as fun, whatever it may be. The next point, and it is true for me, the cost of genealogy might be discouraging, because if you're like me, a student who does not have access to money to get subscriptions, then it can also be another downer, because if you don't have, access to some site that gives you records, then you may think, well, where else can I go? I need money for this, but I don't have it. And then they kind of think, oh, leave it, park it, whatever. And they don't come back to it. So that can be a real discourager. And my final point for this is, there mightn't be sufficient resources to help aid young genealogists in their journey. I have young genealogists in there. This also applies to beginners. If there aren't, resources or guides to help beginners or young genealogists out on their journey, then they may feel, oh, this is too difficult, this is too hard, I can't do it. And then they just throw in the towel. But if they have, guides to help them along the way, they may seem a bit more keen to do it. Like, in school, I had an assignment where we had the option to write a book. And I chose to write it on Irish genealogy, the basics. So birth, marriage, death, civil records, and census. So I have sent that to a few people who have started out, and they found it very helpful. So it helps some, but it won't help all. But as long as you have something out there, just even if it's little tips or tricks or something to help them, it can make young genealogists a bit more keen to, look into their family history if they kind of have a bit of weight taken off them when it comes to trying to work out how to find things. So what can be done to change that? I will cover this first point at the end, because I have a bit to say on this. For older genealogists, or any genealogist for that matter, to nurture, support, and advise young genealogists, or else there won't be any to pick up the pieces. Again, I will touch on it later on, so I'll leave that there. So my next point is for more places such as a Hidden Branch and the Next Gen Genealogy Network to be talked about more, as these are great places for young genealogists of all ages to connect. I'm in the Facebook group for the Next Gen Network, and there are it's an immense group with a lot of members, so you instantly are connected with an awful lot of genealogists all around the world. And the Hidden Branch community we have for young genealogists, we have 28 members, I believe, at the moment, and it's open to anyone from the age of 13 to 25. And immediately when they join and they're accepted, they're united with a community of young genealogists their own age, so they don't feel alone with their own age group. Another thing is, show that not only older people like, enjoy, and do genealogy. I want to mention a story that I heard from a Hidden Branch colleague. So he told me that he joined Twitter because he heard about me. And I was the only young genealogist his own age, doing genealogy. And that only dawned on me that unless young people have kind of someone they can, connect with, like myself, or someone that they notice is doing genealogy that's their own age, they're more likely to do it. And kind of going back to the point on the previous slide, it will, if they have some sort of an influence, then, there's a bigger chance of more young genealogists starting than if there isn't. So that's one big point, I think. Another one is keep talking about your family history. It sounds basic, trust me, but something so basic can be so helpful. Even if it's just little bits about your family's history into your everyday life. Talking about, oh, well, this necklace belonged to your grandmother. Or, the soda bread recipe we use was your great-grandmother Mary's. So, even if it's just you tell the next gen of about, their ancestors, and just telling them little tidbits of info about them, it'll then help them to, think, I wouldn't mind finding out more about great-grandmother Mary or something. So if you do that, no matter how small or big the bits you tell them are, every little bit is like kindling for a fire. And then the interest, when they first start, is the match. And then when you drop the match onto the fire, it's the flame, and that's when they start. And my last point on this is for more content to be created aimed at young genealogists or beginners, as there might not be much content tailored for them. There can be 1,000 guides on Irish genealogy, but are they all tailored for maybe perhaps advanced or intermediate researchers? Or are they all down that end? Or are there any for the beginners? Because if there's hardly any for the beginners, and there's loads for the intermediate and advanced, then how are they supposed to start if they don't have anything to go on? So if you create more content tailored for that, then that'll help. What would I like to see in the future when it comes to getting young people into genealogy? And this may seem like a good idea for some, and think why for others. Genealogy sites to possibly introduce the option of a student plan for young genealogists that want to do their genealogy but aren't looking at a steep cost of doing it. So, like I said in a few slides ago, if you have an expensive subscription and that's the only way of doing it, then the cost is immediately going to turn people away. Because if it's not something a bit more manageable cost-wise, then they're probably not going to do it. Because they'll think, oh, it's too expensive, I don't have the money, therefore I can't do it. And then before you know it, they've stopped. But if there's something catered for a more younger genealogist, a bit of an incentive, if you will, kind of, if there's like a subscription that's more, obviously I don't have a set plan for what a student plan should contain. It is up to the genealogy sites' interpretation as to what they think. So if they had some kind of plan or subscription that still allowed them to research family history for students, but at a bit of a reduced cost, then it may increase the amount of people doing it. It won't increase it by much, because obviously everyone is, for some people, it's just a case of if it isn't free, I won't do it kind of thing. But you'll have a better chance of more young genealogists actually, starting it and, checking it out or something. My next point, and this is kind of like point 3 as well, but it stands for societies and initiatives to engage and interact with young genealogists and being as helpful as they can be. So if whoever's watching this is involved in a family history society or an organization, to a particular historical society or something, get out there on social media, make a website, do something. Just get yourselves out there, because if you want young people to, find you, then that's the best way to do it. I'm probably more likely to interact with a society or an organization if they have active social media channels or a website, because that can be one of the best ways of interacting. And honestly, don't be afraid to interact, even if it's just say, oh, great post, loved reading it or something. It's just something. You're a family history society Twitter account, whatever, interacting with someone and thinking, oh, well, they're quite active. I'll go see what they're doing. And then you'll drive more traffic to your kind of society's page, and then you might get more people interested in joining. And this part I left until last because I will be talking about this quite extensively. So, for the stereotype of no young people are into genealogy to go. Times are changing, and so are the number of young genealogists. This I cannot emphasize enough. If you are one of the people that thinks, oh, young genealogists don't exist, Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen X, whatever, aren't interested in genealogy, who's talking to you now? who's presenting this talk that you are watching. I'm a 17-year-old genealogist from Ireland. We do exist. The Hidden Branch currently is a team of 11 people, ranging from the age of 13 to 23. We are young genealogists. That's 11, straight off the bat. In the Facebook group, we have 28 people. And that's 17 more young genealogists in the world dotted around the place. Is that enough to convince you that there are young genealogists in this world? Because, I mean, we do exist. We are here. We are as interested as you are in genealogy. We are as interested as you are to make sure that genealogy continues on for the future, whatever it takes. And we want to make a difference as much as you do when it comes to genealogy, digitising records, doing our bit, researching our family, keeping the family history legacy alive. We want to do it as much as you do. So we do exist. And some food for thought. A tweet from my Hidden Branch colleague Catherine. Age isn't what makes a good genealogy researcher a good researcher. Respect, empower, and uplift young genealogy researchers. We are credible, professional, hard-working, and deserve respect just like any other genealogist. And the biggest thing I can say is, don't be nasty. I haven't, like I've said many times, I haven't been a victim of it. I haven't been on the receiving end of it. I haven't seen it happen to any of my colleagues or anything. But if there's perhaps that young person that you're in that Facebook group with and you think, ooh, I might have been a bit mean, just help them as much as possible. Like, I guess it's kind of just a case of give and take. We'll respect you if you respect us. It's a two-way street. It's not a one-way. And just because we are young doesn't mean that we don't know anything. I'm 17 and I know, what forms there are for a census, where to find birth, marriage, death, civil records, where to find parish records. I know all that. And we all have our own expertise. For me, it's Irish research. For any of my Hidden Branch colleagues, it varies. So we all have our own unique kind of expertise in genealogy. Like, I wouldn't have a clue about Scottish or British records. So I'd go to someone that does know about them. Or I might look up a guide and say, right, where can I find this, this and this? And at the bottom, you will see the kind of attention that tweet got. I left that bit in there, so 49 retweets, 306 likes. I left that in there because it shows how much it resonated with the genealogy community. Because, if that many people share that same view, then, it just goes to show that, just because you're a young genealogist doesn't mean that, that you don't know anything. You do know stuff. And if you're an older genealogist watching this, and you're kind of thinking, what can I do? What can I do for next gen? Help them out. Just empower them. Make them feel like, they're doing something right. Give them feedback on a post. Comment on a photo saying, wow, that's a great photo. Tell me more about it. And then, bit by bit, the next generation will feel right. I have people I can talk to. I can talk to genealogists, and they're happy to give me feedback. Because, I don't have to feel, alone, kind of thinking, oh, well, I don't know stuff. But if you guide them and help them, assist them, help them with a search, tell them where they can find something, just little bits, little tidbits, can just tip the scales in the favour of young genealogists pursuing their journey. Keep going, keep researching. But if you don't, then that will tip the scales in the favour of not continuing on, not doing it, not researching, not investigating. So we don't want that. We want people helping. And my response to this was an original, just plain retweet, but I thought, right, this is my time to take my viewpoint. So apologies for the layout. I was trying to accommodate, the layout. I never know how big it is, because on my screen I can't see it. It's only on the recording afterwards. So I just said, I know I just did a plain retweet, but being a young genealogist, I can't and mustn't just do an empty retweet. I can't tell you how many times I agree with this. When I joined the lovely Twitter community in the summer of 2019, I felt that there wasn't any people my age on Twitter, and there wasn't any to start with. But I'm not saying I've seen it or have been a victim of it or giving out to anyone about it. Think of it as a gentle reminder. It's something we all have to keep in mind. Support, nurture, and encourage the next gen, especially people who think they're alone in this field. They are not in any way. There's me, PJ, Tyler, and Emily, my Hidden Branch colleagues, just to name a few. It's the idea that made the Hidden Branch a reality. There's a community for young genealogists of all ages to connect and collaborate. So to attract more young genealogists, all we can do is help, assist, advise, nurture, and engage with them. And don't be afraid to give them tips and invite them to Twitter chats and anything you can do. It's the only way the genealogy community will continue. And with that stereotype, I saw a tweet one time that, in a nutshell, it was just saying only older people do it, not younger people. No young people do it. That's my one big mission I'm trying to get rid of. Get rid of that stereotype. Say, no, sorry, there are young genealogists in this world. They are researching. They are rising up. And they will, continue on their family legacy and their family history journey. But, as well, you need to know that there are young genealogists, and we do exist, and we aren't gonna, we aren't afraid to, be out there. We aren't afraid to, speak about our family history. We aren't afraid to, ask for help when we need it. We just need older genealogists and wiser genealogists to help us. So, if you take nothing else from this presentation, just please help the next generation. It's the only way the genealogy world will continue. And lastly, thank you for listening. I hope I did fairly okay. This is my first presentation, so hopefully I did fairly well. I just want to thank the Genealogy Show for the work they put in to making this show a reality in the way they've done it. It's very cool to hear all the updates they've been giving on their Twitter feed, and the amount they liked hiding from us up until the very last minute. And and as well, just to thank them for allowing me and accepting me as a speaker, because I didn't think I would first of all, have the courage to even send the application to do this, or even after I send the application to be accepted. So I'm so fortunate that this did happen. And thank you to Catherine for allowing me to use her tweet as an example in my presentation. And if you have any questions, comments, or queries, please do contact me on the socials below, or go to my website danielgenealogy.wordpress.com. And I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time, and have a good time at the Genealogy Show. Bye everyone.